Well, thanks for inviting me. I hope you didn't think you were getting an expert this morning on the subject of mysticism. I think you already have one here in your midst. You want to trade places, Rich? Okay. I do not consider myself anything close to an expert on this topic, mysticism, but it probably touches us in a lot of ways you don't even realize. You just mentioned the Bible. Probably the biggest collection of mystics in our faith are the prophets, the evangelists, and St. Paul. And because they were all mystics. I say that because they wrote under divine inspiration. They had to be in touch with God in a very direct way in order to write what they wrote, but they did. And so actually St. John is considered probably the first Christian mystic from the time of Christ onward, St. John the Evangelist. I took a very basic approach, what is it, not how does it work, but what is it, who are mystics, what characterizes a mystic, just kind of a very basic approach to this topic. I call it Christian mysticism, but as Lionel reminded me before we started, mysticism is not confined to the Christian faith. There have been mystics in other faiths probably before Christianity. Moses talked to God. Moses predated Christ by a long time. Moses was a mystic. He spoke directly with God. So there are mystics in the Jewish faith, there are mystics in the Muslim faith. The Sufi Muslim tradition is a mystical connection with God. Of course, Lionel can tell you all about the Hindu side of this, but there are mystics in all faiths. If you think of Buddhism, there probably are mystics in the Buddhist. Buddha himself was probably a mystic because he didn't just sit down one day and dream up these ideas. They came from someplace. And so I'm not saying he was a Christian, but Christianity began with Christ. God was around from the beginning of the beginning. So there's no point in the ground where you can say, well, mysticism started with Christ. No, it did not. It was there long before Christ. Christ, of course, was the ultimate mystic. He was in direct communication with God. Mysticism is most of what I'm going to talk about, I got out of researching stuff, just reading stuff. Thank God for the internet. There's a lot of good information on almost every topic. You had to go look in libraries before. Now you just move your mouse and tinkle the keys a little bit, and there it is, ready to be printed out.
Did you check with Mr. Google?
Mr. Google? If you don't check with Mr. Google, you don't know much about what's going on. I'm just glad it wasn't there when I was in college. That's all I got to say. Because I would be stealing stuff from every place and writing papers the easy way. Mysticism is a vital part of a Christian heritage, but it's also the core of Christian spirituality. And basically, what is mysticism? It's a direct experience of God. I mean, you could parse those words any way you want, but it's the direct experience of God. Now, what does direct experience of God mean? It means a human being's direct experience or consciousness of the ultimate reality, which is God. A direct experience of the divine. The essence of mysticism is the sense of some kind of contact with God, with the divine or the transcendent, frequently understood in its higher form as involving union with God. I remind you during the Mass when in this case the deacon mixes the water and wine, he says, I forget what he says right now. I say it every Sunday, but I tend to say it again. May the mingling of this water and wine be for us the divine, something like that. Yeah, okay. Isn't that funny how you forget things that you shouldn't forget? Through the mingling of this water and wine, will you come to share in the divinity of Christ? May we come to share in the divinity. Now, those aren't just words. May we come to share in the divinity of Christ, who humbled himself to share in our humanity. So there's this exchange. I become part of you, you become part of me. So it's not beyond the realm of possibility for us to be intimately united with God. Mysticism is immediate, direct, and intuitive knowledge of God attained through a personal religious experience. How many people here have had a personal religious experience of some kind? I'm not going to ask you to tell about it. I'm just curious to see what percentage. 4 out of about 6 out of, so half of you have had a personal experience with God. It happens. The problem is most people don't know it. Or they say, you know, boy, I must have had something to drink last night or something. But it does happen. We've all had a personal experience with God. It could be related with a tragedy. It could be related to some tragedy that's befallen us. Maybe we almost had a terrible accident and we stop for a minute to catch our breath and think, wow, how did I, you know, get spared that one? Or somebody in our family, or somebody we know. Or it could be not just in connection with tragedy, it could be in connection with great joy. A lot of us, some people, you know, some fathers, when they see their newborn child for the first time, that's almost a mystical experience, because you begin to think of what just happened. And everything is not an experience with God, but I think you know what that means when I say it, because the problem is it's fleeting. It doesn't hang around unless you're Padre Pio, whose feast day we celebrated yesterday. Another great mystic, by the way, Padre Pio. Talk about direct communication with God. I mean, the man lived in direct communication with God. And so did St. Francis of Assisi, so did St. Catherine of Siena, St. Teresa of Avila, St. Teresa of Lisieux. How many know that St. Catherine of Siena was a laywoman? Most people think her was a nun. She wasn't a nun. She was a Dominican tertiary, a lay person just like you and me. But she's a great mystic, considered a great mystic in the church. Some of those mystics have been deemed to be doctors of the church, like St. Teresa of Lisieux. So mysticism is, there's a lot of mystics in our church, as well as in a lot of other religions. Mysticism is concerned, on the part of the person, with the nature, reality, and the struggle of the individual to gain a clear vision of reality. In this case, reality is the divine reality that we're talking about, and the transformation of consciousness that accompanies such vision. One author called it an adventure of the wild things of God. We probably, if we really knew how God thought and acted, we would probably consider that to be pretty wild. Because when you consider a being that has no limit to their power and knowledge, that's pretty wild. I mean, you know, a lot of rock stars think they're gods because they have so much money they can do anything they want, and they think that's pretty wild. But that's nothing compared to what God is able to do and to be and to inspire in us. Mysticism is a kind of knowing which goes beyond intellectual understanding. I understand what God is, but can I really experience God in a personal way? It's not a matter of belief, although it starts with belief. It's beyond intellectual understanding, and it's marked by love and joy. If you're having a mystical experience, you're not going to be depressed at that moment, because God is not depression or anger or frustration or anxiety or any of those things. God is love and joy. So one of the signs of a mystical experience would be a feeling of inestimable joy and great love. I mean, you probably all had the experience of receiving the Eucharist, and all of a sudden you begin to tear up. That's, you know, you didn't make that happen yourself. You didn't make that happen yourself. How many people have teared up sometimes when you, that's pretty close to the emotional side of it, but there's a lot of emotion involved in this. We are human beings, after all. We have emotions. Jesus said, I and the Father are one. Therefore, the union of man and God is possible. He said so. Remember, Jesus is God, but he is also at the same time man, just like you and I. So, you know, one divine person with two natures, a human nature and a divine nature. So when he says the Father and I are one, the implication is that the human Christ is one with the Father as well. So therefore, he's basically said this is within the realm of possibility. It's not something that somebody wrote about when they were just trying to write something. Christian mysticism is referred also as transforming union. Transforming union. One of the things I'm going to leave behind with you, not with you, but with the name of this little book, is called Mystical Union with God Through the 9 Degrees of Prayer. It's about 75 pages. You'll read it in 30 minutes. I mean, it's just, at least the first time you read it in 30 minutes. Then maybe the 9th or 10th time you read it, you begin to understand what he's saying. But it's called Mystical Union with God by Reverend James Alberione. I'll leave it, I'll give you the name of it. It's Alberione. It's a very short, it's $1.50, St. Paul, Daughters of St. Paul Publications. Mystical Union with God Through the 9 Degrees of Prayer. And let me just take a second here, because he is a very short forward. He refers to love of God as a ladder that is lost in infinity, but it is not made for lazy souls. The first degree of love, or prayer, he equates love and prayer, of God is vocal prayer, which teaches us how to speak with God. The second degree is meditation, which causes us to contemplate God's perfection. The third degree is affective prayer, with an A, which St. Teresa of Avila describes as prayer more of the heart than of the mind, in which the affections of the will dominate the reasoning of the intellect. The fourth degree is prayer of simplicity, which consists in a simple, loving gaze upon God himself, or on some perfection of God, on Christ, or on one of his mysteries, or on some other Christian truth. The fifth degree of prayer, infused recollection, is a most vivid light that God gives the soul. This recollection captivates the intellect because the Holy Spirit infuses the operations of the gifts of wisdom, understanding, knowledge, and counsel. The sixth degree of prayer is prayer of quiet, in which, writes St. Teresa, the soul feels the presence of God and is lost within it, inebriated with love, reveling in the joy that it no longer lacks anything. The last 3 degrees of prayer, prayer of union, prayer of ecstatic union, and prayer of transforming union, belong to the mystical life and constitute the complete divinization of man. Life seems too short for climbing to the top of this mystic ladder, but each of us can reach it with God's grace, so let us try. For all eternity, this is pretty key, we will each remain rooted in the degree of prayer in which death has overtaken us. That kind of imposes an obligation on all of us, I think, to pursue a much, 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 much closer union with God than we've ever imagined before.
And you can do that by going to adoration.
Man, put in a plug for adoration. You can do it by living your life in a certain way. You can, but it does take adoration. I mean, adoration, receiving the Eucharist frequently. How can you become part of somebody if you don't spend time with them, you know?
Can you read that last, for all eternity?
For all eternity, we will each remain rooted in the degree of prayer in which death has overtaken us. Thus, let us take as our motto, prayer first of all, prayer above all, prayer the life of all. The thought from St. Francis de Sales may spur us on. Jesus commanded us to love him with our whole mind, with our whole heart, with all our strength, and he gives us the grace to do it. Whoever fails to reach this goal has not lived his life entirely. That's just from the foreword of the book. So the rest of it, he goes through each of the 9 degrees, 1 or 2 pages on each, sometimes more, but he explains what they each mean. I really, it gets such a quick read. I mean, it could be your starting point. There's much bigger books on mystical prayer. Garrigou-Lagrange has written a huge book called Transforming Union with God. I mean, you can read and read and read and read on this, but the great temptation is to try to step back and judge yourself. Well, where am I here? Am I at level 3 or level 4? Am I halfway between 4 and 5? Or I guess I better go back to 2 because I didn't do 3 very well. This is not your will here. This is God's will. And we can't force, just like anything else, we can't force God's will. We have to have the desire, leave it in His hands, and get the hell out of the way. Because really, that's what it's all about. I mean, He's the one that's going to do this, not you. So I'm getting off my topic here a little bit, but that would be what I would say. That's my fear, is that I'll get too hung up in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You know, and I can't judge where I am in this, and neither can any of you. So I think we have to really trust with a capital T. You know, the desire is there. Let God take care of the rest. If you have the desire, God will fill in the blanks. I mean, it's the same way with everything else in life. If you have the desire and you pray for it, and I heartily recommend, there's a little, I didn't bring it with me, but there's a little prayer leaflet from the Padre Pio Foundation, and he prayed this prayer every day. It's a prayer to the Sacred Heart. And it's basically 3 times he asks for, you know, he reminds Christ, you said, knocking you shall, knocking it shall be, seeking you shall find, asking you shall receive, knocking it will be